A callous, unfeeling man fastened a malnourished wild stallion to a gnarled tree deep within a barren wilderness, its feeble form isolated and besieged by the distant, mournful cries of ravenous canines. The ailing steed, its eyes closing in resignation, braced for its inevitable doom. Yet, just as the pack of wolves advanced, an astonishing turn of events unfolded, a twist that would alter the course of everything. Remain with us as we recount an epic tale of survival, unwavering bravery, and the unforeseen ties that defied destiny. As twilight's icy grip enveloped the rugged expanse of the northern wilds, the vast forest was bathed in somber hues of silver and burnt sienna. A profound stillness reigned over the land, disturbed only by the soft rustle of foliage and the sporadic, distant baying of wolves echoing among the hills. In the midst of this fragile serenity, a heart-wrenching scene shattered the calm. A skeletal stallion, once the epitome of untamed majesty, now shuddered in torment as it hung bound to a towering, ancient pine. Emaciated ribs pressed against its faded, copper coat, each shallow gasp a painful struggle against exhaustion. A coarse, unyielding cord bit into its neck, forcing it to remain anchored, while its trembling hooves barely clung to the frosty soil. Near this pitiable creature stood a solitary man whose shadow stretched long in the waning light. Marcus Fletcher, a grizzled, weather-beaten rancher in his late 40s, observed the suffering animal with an expression as cold as the wind itself. His heavy boots crunched over the frost-hardened ground as he meticulously adjusted the rope, ensuring its unbreakable hold. "There's no use wasting time on you," he muttered in a tone void of sympathy. "You've become more trouble than you're worth." The once bright, soulful eyes of the stallion flickered briefly in Marcus's direction before succumbing to defeat. It was ill. Its vitality had been drained by days of neglect. Found a week earlier on his land, the horse had been limping and clearly forsaken by a previous owner. At first, Marcus had considered nursing it back to health, but mounting debts and the strain on his struggling operation convinced him otherwise. Without another glance, Marcus turned away, his coat pulled tight against the piercing chill, while the wolves' howls swelled in intensity. He stole a final look toward the sinking sun behind rugged, jagged mountains. "They'll catch up soon enough," he murmured to himself, then strode off into the enveloping shadows of the forest. Left alone, the forlorn stallion drooped in silent despair as its ears twitched at the distant, predatory howls. Night fell swiftly, and with it came the inevitable arrival of hungry predators. The wolves, emboldened by starvation, would soon be drawn by the scent of vulnerability. With a feeble shift, the horse wobbled, releasing a forlorn, pitiful whinny, a sound not of hope, but of surrender to fate. As darkness swallowed the land, the first of the lupin figures emerged, its eyes aglow like eerie lanterns and its sleek body gliding soundlessly through the undergrowth. One by one, two more wolves joined, forming a loose ring around the trembling tree. Their low, rumbling growls resonated like distant thunder, while the Mustang's nostrils flared, detecting the imminent threat. One wolf inched forward, its teeth bared in anticipation, poised to pounce. Suddenly, an unexpected, shrill whistle pierced the silence. A high, sharp note slicing through the tension like a blade. The wolves froze, ears swiveling toward the sudden sound, and even the horse lifted its head, its ears perking up for the first time in hours. The piercing whistle resounded again, followed by the rustling of leaves as a solitary figure emerged from the darkness. Clutching a flickering lantern that cast dancing lights over the grim scene, the newcomer advanced. The wolves snarled and hesitated, uncertain of this intruder's intent. With deliberate steps, the man's features came into focus, a wiry, stooped hermit with weathered skin and eyes burning with resolve. "Scram from here," he barked, swinging the lantern in a broad arc. The predators, instinctively recognizing his determination, gradually retreated into the night, leaving the battered stallion and the enigmatic stranger alone beneath the towering pine. The hermit approached the horse with cautious compassion, his eyes narrowing as he surveyed its deplorable state. "Well now, aren't you in a pitiful shape?" he observed, retrieving a small blade from his belt. The stallion tensed, but offered no resistance as the man deftly sliced through the rope that bound it. "Whoever abandoned you here intended your end," he murmured, his tone softening ever so slightly. "But I reckon there's still a spark of defiance left in you." As the final strand of cord fell away, the exhausted horse collapsed onto the cold ground. With surprising strength for his slight frame, the hermit hoisted the animal onto a makeshift sled he had fashioned from fallen branches. The horse, too drained to object, surrendered its will as the hermit hitched the sled to his mule and began the arduous journey back to his secluded cabin nestled deep in the forest. The steed's eyelids fluttered shut, lulled by the steady clop of the mule's hooves, a small mercy in its long confrontation with death. When dawn finally broke over the dense woodland, the first golden rays filtered through the towering canopy, illuminating the rough-hewn cabin that served as the hermit's haven. Smoke drifted lazily from the chimney, a solitary sign of life in this remote refuge. Inside, the weak stallion lay sprawled upon a bed of hay in a shadowed corner, its shallow breaths the only indication of life. The hermit, whose name was now Gabriel, moved quietly about the cabin. His lean frame and calloused, weathered hands betrayed decades spent carving out an existence in the unforgiving wild. Casting a sidelong glance at the horse, he noted every twitch and subtle movement. "You're tougher than you look," he murmured as he stirred a pot of herbs simmering over the fire. Gabriel had witnessed countless acts of cruelty over the years, but discovering the abandoned animal stirred something deep within him, a quiet indignation at the thought of any soul leaving such a creature to perish. As memories of his youthful days, when life beyond the forest brimmed with both promise and peril, flitted through his mind, Gabriel pushed them aside to focus on the task at hand. The horse stirred, its ears lifting at the gentle crackle of the fire. Gabriel knelt beside it, cradling a steaming bowl of herbal concoction. "This should help," he whispered, as he carefully dribbled the warm liquid into the animal's mouth with a wooden spoon. For a brief, intimate moment, their eyes met, a silent understanding that neither would surrender to despair. Over the following days, Gabriel devoted himself entirely to nursing the horse back to strength. He named the animal Flame, a tribute to the faint glimmer of life that still smoldered within its weary frame. Every morning, Gabriel would forage for medicinal herbs and other natural remedies to restore Flame's vitality, tending to its wounds with gentle, steadfast care. Gradually, subtle signs of recovery began to emerge. Flame's once lackluster coat started to reclaim a soft luster, and its labored breathing grew steadier as each day passed. Gabriel allowed himself a small smile of satisfaction as he observed the transformation. "You've got spirit in you, after all," he remarked one cool evening while seated on a creaking stool beside Flame. Yet, despite this progress, the lurking menace of the wolves still haunted the surrounding darkness. Their howls at night were an ever-present reminder of the dangers lurking just beyond the light. Gabriel kept a trusted rifle close by the door and a lantern burning through the long hours of night, his keen eyes scanning the periphery for any sign of movement. One bright morning, with the sun climbing high in the sky, Gabriel decided it was time to test Flame's newfound strength. He gently removed the improvised bandages from the horse's legs and stepped back, his heart thudding with both hope and apprehension. "All right, Flame," he said softly, his voice both firm and kind. "Let's see what you've got." The stallion's ears twitched in acknowledgement, and with a deep, shuddering breath, it hoisted itself onto its front legs. Then, summoning every ounce of willpower, it shifted its weight onto its hind legs. Though it swayed unsteadily, Flame managed to stand. Gabriel's weathered face broke into a delighted grin. "That's it, boy. That's it," he cheered quietly. Tentatively, Flame took another step, then another, its movements measured yet determined. Witnessing this slow resurgence of confidence filled Gabriel with a long-forgotten pride, and he reached out, and to his amazement, Flame inched closer, its dark eyes locking onto his with a newfound trust. In the days that followed, Gabriel continued working closely with Flame, leading the horse out into a small clearing near the cabin where it could graze freely. With each passing day, the once ailing animal grew stronger and more assured of itself. Gabriel marveled at Flame's resilience, the indomitable spirit that had refused to be broken by cruelty and neglect. Yet even as the stallion reclaimed its strength, the wolves had not abandoned their vigil. One fateful night, as Gabriel sat by a crackling fire inside the cabin, his old hound, Rusty, began to growl in a low, ominous tone. Gabriel grasped his rifle and stepped out into the chilly darkness, the lantern's wavering light barely piercing the murk of the clearing. His eyes swept across the tree-line until, for a moment, he thought he saw a pair of glowing eyes lurking in the shadows. Tightening his grip on the weapon, he whispered, "Not tonight. You won't take him." Inside, Flame lingered near the window, ears alert at every sound. Though the stallion's strength had returned, its fiery will to fight still burned brighter than ever. Gabriel was resolute. Flame was not merely a survivor, but a fighter, and together they would face whatever perils the wilderness hurled their way. A brisk wind carried an invigorating chill as dawn broke anew, casting long beams of light over the dewy clearing where Flame grazed near the cabin. Gabriel leaned against the doorway, quietly admiring the horse that had transformed from a feeble, broken creature into one of resplendent vigor. The scars on its legs, though still visible, were gradually healing, and with every new day, Flame's posture grew more confident, its head held high. Yet beneath this scene of hard-won triumph, a nagging unease stirred in Gabriel's heart. The wolves had not been seen for several days, and their unnerving silence only intensified his apprehension. In the unforgiving wild, complacency was a luxury one could ill afford. Slinging his rifle over his shoulder, he stepped into the clearing and addressed Flame in a gentle tone. "Let's stretch those legs, boy." Flame responded with a soft snort, lifting its head from the grass. Gabriel then fashioned a simple lead from a sturdy length of twine and cautiously looped it around Flame's neck. Though the stallion had grown to trust him, there still lingered a spark of untamed wildness in its eyes, a reminder of the fierce spirit that had carried it this far. "Easy now," Gabriel murmured as they ventured into the forest together. Beneath the soaring pines that cast dappled shadows upon a carpet of soft green needles, Flame trotted beside Gabriel. Every step was measured, its hooves crunching softly on the leaf-strewn earth. Gabriel's vigilant gaze scanned the surroundings, aware that these woods held dangers beyond measure. "This land is unforgiving," he confided to himself, "but you're stronger now, and soon you'll be ready for whatever lies ahead." Venturing deeper into the forest, Gabriel guided Flame to a shallow, babbling brook where the horse drank deeply, its muscles rippling beneath a recovering coat. Gabriel knelt by the water, splashing his face to awaken his senses. For a fleeting moment, the wilderness seemed to pause, a sanctuary of quiet, punctuated only by the gentle murmur of the stream and the distant chirps of morning birds. However, the fragile peace was abruptly shattered by the faintest rustle of leaves, a sound so soft that most would have overlooked it. Gabriel's hand froze on his rifle as Flame lifted its head, ears swiveling toward the disturbance. The once tranquil forest now pulsed with a sense of impending peril. Gabriel stood motionless, eyes fixed on the trees as the rustling grew steadily louder and nearer. Suddenly, a deep, menacing growl echoed among the pines, and from the gloom emerged a pair of luminous eyes, soon followed by several more as a pack of wolves materialized. Their sleek forms circled the clearing, each movement exuding silent menace. Gabriel raised his rifle, aiming steadily at the largest among them. "Not tonight," he murmured, his voice resolute despite the rush of adrenaline. The alpha wolf snarled, baring its sharp fangs as it advanced. But Gabriel fired a warning shot that reverberated through the forest. The wolves flinched yet remained, their bodies coiled like springs, ready to attack. Knowing he could not dispatch them all, Gabriel glanced at Flame, now pawing at the ground, nostrils flared in defiance. The stallion was no longer paralyzed by fear. It was poised to fight. "Go on, Flame," Gabriel shouted. In response, the horse reared up, its powerful legs striking the air in a cry of rebellion, and charged at the encircling wolves. Its thunderous hooves scattered the predators, whose snarls soon turned to startled yelps as Flame struck out with ferocious hind kicks. Dodging an aggressive lunge from the alpha, Flame moved with a surprising agility that belied its recent weakness, its every movement a testament to its indomitable will. Within moments, the wolf pack, outmatched and disoriented, retreated into the darkness as swiftly as they had appeared. Flame stood in the clearing, breathing heavily with eyes alight in triumph. Gabriel approached slowly, his heart pounding with a mixture of relief and pride. "You did it, boy," he whispered, his voice thick with admiration. Flame snorted and tossed its head, as if to say that victory had been inevitable all along. Gabriel chuckled softly while patting the stallion's neck. "You're extraordinary, my friend." As they began the long walk back to the cabin, the forest itself seemed to brighten, its shadows receding in deference to their courage. Gabriel knew that, together, he and Flame were more formidable than they could ever be apart. A bond forged in the crucible of survival and unyielding determination. Later that crisp morning, as golden light filtered through the trees, Gabriel swung open the cabin door. Rays of sunlight danced upon the forest floor as Flame grazed peacefully outside, ears twitching at every subtle sound. The wolves had vanished, and for the first time in weeks, Gabriel allowed himself a moment of respite. Yet deep within, a lingering sense of foreboding remained. The wild was notorious for testing the resolve of even the strongest souls. With his rifle slung across his shoulder, Gabriel set about his daily tasks, gathering firewood, checking his snares, and foraging for herbs, each chore now imbued with a renewed sense of purpose. The presence of Flame had transformed his solitary existence, forging a connection that filled a long-emptied void. As he neared the edge of the clearing, a set of large, fresh hoofprints caught his eye, imprints unmistakably left by horseshoes. Gabriel knelt and traced the marks with a trembling finger. "Someone's been here," he murmured under his breath, scanning the tree-line with wary eyes. The thought of an intruder in his secluded refuge unsettled him deeply. In these remote parts, few dared to venture so far, and if someone had, it was unlikely their intentions were benign. By midday, Flame had grown increasingly restless, pawing at the earth as if sensing impending danger. Noticing the shift in the stallion's demeanor, Gabriel gripped his rifle tighter. "Easy now, Flame," he soothed softly, stepping closer to the vigilant animal. "We'll figure this out together." Suddenly, the sound of approaching hooves broke the oppressive silence, initially faint, then steadily rising in volume. Gabriel tensed as three riders emerged from the tree line, their faces obscured by wide-brimmed hats and scarves, moving with determined purpose. They halted as soon as their eyes landed on Flame. "There he is," declared the tallest among them in a gruff tone, dismounting with a heavy thud. "I knew you'd show up." Gabriel positioned himself squarely between Flame and the intruders. "This is private land," he stated firmly. "You have no business here." The leader scoffed, his hand casually resting on the grip of a revolver at his side. "That stallion isn't yours, old man. It belongs to us. We've been tracking him ever since he was left for dead, tied up like refuse during a raging storm." Gabriel's jaw tightened. "He's not going anywhere," he asserted, rifle leveled steadily at the man's chest. An eerie silence descended, thick enough to slice with a knife, as the other two riders fidgeted in their saddles, hands hovering near their weapons. Sensing their hostility, Flame took a defensive step closer, muscles tensing as if ready to spring. "You've got nerve," the leader sneered, "but you're outnumbered. Do you honestly think you can stop us?" Gabriel's grip on his rifle tightened even further. "I don't care how many there are, this stallion stays right here." The tense standoff dragged on, neither side yielding. Gabriel's heart pounded, yet his hands remained resolute. He had faced the wild's fury before, from ravenous wolves to brutal storms, But this confrontation felt different. This was a battle for everything he had grown to cherish. With a low, menacing gesture, the leader raised his hand. "We'll be back," he warned, voice dripping with menace. "And next time, we won't ask politely." With that, the riders spurred their horses and vanished into the dark wood, leaving Gabriel and Flame alone in the silent clearing. Lowering his rifle, Gabriel's mind raced. Who were these men, and what did they intend? He resolved then that he would never allow Flame to fall into their grasp. That very evening, Gabriel labored to fortify his cabin. He reinforced every door and window, set traps around the perimeter, and kept his rifle loaded and within reach. Outside, Flame stood vigil, its eyes scanning the shifting shadows as though on guard. The stallion had become far more than a rescued animal. It was now his steadfast partner, a living emblem of resilience. As the moon climbed high into the star-studded sky, Gabriel sat by a modest fire, his thoughts heavy with worry. The earlier wolf encounter had been a test of strength, but tonight's threat was different, a struggle of wills for what was right. Looking over at Flame, who remained upright and defiant despite its scars, Gabriel whispered, "We'll face them together, no matter what." The forest was eerily silent the following morning. Even the birds seemed reluctant to break the stillness. Emerging from the cabin with his rifle slung casually over his shoulder, Gabriel found Flame grazing near the tree-line, every sense alert to even the softest rustle. Although the stallion's body was relaxed, its vigilant eyes betrayed an inner warning. The men would return, and they wouldn't be alone. Having spent the night preparing, Gabriel had fortified his defenses, mapped out every potential blind spot, and set traps around the clearing. Years of living in these wild lands had honed his skills in protecting what was his, and he refused to let hired thugs wreck. Lame Flame without a fight. The morning hours stretched slowly, every moment thick with tension as Gabriel's thoughts replayed the rider's menacing words, their possessive claim over the stallion, treating it as nothing more than property. By midday, the unmistakable sound of hooves shattered the silence once again. Gabriel's pulse quickened as he stepped outside, rifle in hand, to find 4 riders emerging from the trees. This time, each man was armed and mounted on powerful steeds. The leader, tall and with a cruel smirk, dismounted and declared, "I told you we'd be back," his voice echoing across the clearing. Gabriel, his stance unwavering, retorted, "I don't tolerate trespassers." The leader chuckled derisively. "You're outmatched, old man, 4 against 1. Hand over the stallion, and we might let you walk away unscathed." Flame snorted and pawed at the ground, as though instinctively sensing the danger. Gabriel's resolve hardened. "This horse isn't yours," he declared. "You abandoned it, left it for dead. That makes it mine now." The leader's mocking smile vanished, replaced by a steely glare. "You've got guts, but guts won't save you," he warned. Tension escalated rapidly. One of the men drew his pistol, but before he could aim, Gabriel fired a sharp warning shot that cracked across the clearing, startling the horses and sending nearby birds into flight. "Next shot won't miss," Gabriel warned in a low, steady tone. The leader gestured for his men to hold back, sneering, "You really think you can take us all on? Just one man?" Gabriel's smirk was confident. "I'm one man who knows these woods better than any of you." Almost on cue, one of the traps Gabriel had earlier set snapped shut, ensnaring the leg of a rider's horse and throwing its rider to the ground in a chaotic tangle of limbs and curses. Seizing the moment, Gabriel edged back toward the cabin, his rifle still trained on the remaining attackers. "Leave now and no one gets hurt," he warned. "Step any closer, and I won't hesitate." The leader's face contorted in rage, but he recognized Gabriel's unwavering determination. With a final, bitter command, "Get him and get that damn horse." The ensuing moments blurred into a frenzy. One assailant charged at Flame with a lasso, but the stallion reared and, with a powerful kick, sent the would-be attacker stumbling. Gabriel fired again, grazing a man's shoulder and forcing him to retreat as his mount bolted away. Driven by instinct and desperation, Flame lunged at another attacker, its hooves striking with a force that shook the very earth. Amid the ensuing chaos, even as one rider desperately tried to rein in his panicked horse, Gabriel's focus remained unyielding. With one final, calculated shot aimed at the leader, Gabriel's voice rang out. "This isn't over." The leader growled, turned, and vanished into the dark forest, followed by his disordered men. As the dust settled and the clearing fell silent, Gabriel slowly lowered his rifle, his chest heaving with adrenaline. Flame stood proudly in the center, its sides rising and falling with heavy breaths, eyes ablaze with victorious fire. "You did well, boy," Gabriel murmured softly, running his hand along the stallion's neck. Flame snorted in reply, as if to say it had known the outcome all along. "We're not finished yet," Gabriel cautioned. "They'll be back, but when they do, we'll be ready." As the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the clearing in a warm, golden glow, Gabriel set about reinforcing his defenses. Though the battle had been won, the fight was far from over. The man and his stallion, bound by unyielding resilience and fierce determination, were a force united, prepared to face any future threat. Night deepened as the forest shadows stretched long once more, and Gabriel paced near his fortified cabin, rifle at the ready. His mind churned with thoughts of the men who had fled earlier. He knew their retreat was only temporary. Men like that rarely accepted defeat lightly, and they would likely return, angrier and more determined than before. Flame remained nearby, every muscle tensed and every ear alert. The stallion had battled sickness, cruelty, and wild beasts, and now stood as a steadfast guardian of the life Gabriel had reclaimed. Together, they would face whatever came next. Gabriel spent the remaining daylight hours preparing for the final confrontation, resetting traps, honing the sharp edges of his knives, and ensuring every round in his rifle was accounted for. His old hound, Rusty, padded quietly at his heels, a silent reminder of years spent in solitude. Tonight, the cabin would transform from a mere shelter into a stronghold. As darkness fully enveloped the forest, its nocturnal symphony awakened. The distant call of an owl, the rustle of leaves in the wind, and the faint crunch of footsteps too soft for most to detect. But Gabriel's keen eyes were fixed on the treeline. "They're here," he whispered, narrowing his gaze as lantern light flickered through the trees. This time, four riders emerged in tight formation, their horses moving with grim purpose. The leader, his wide-brimmed hat casting a dark shadow over his face, dismounted with deliberate intent and brandished a gleaming shotgun in the pale moonlight. "We're not leaving without the stallion," he declared, his voice slicing through the silence. "You have one final chance to surrender him." Stepping from the cabin with rifle raised, Gabriel responded coolly, "I think you misunderstand. This horse isn't going anywhere with you." The leader sneered, his grip on the shotgun tightening. "You're a stubborn old fool. Stubbornness alone won't save you." The tension in the air grew almost tangible as the riders fanned out, weapons drawn. Gabriel's heart pounded, yet his hands remained unshaken. He had faced the raw fury of nature, ferocious beasts and merciless storms, but this challenge was different. It was a test of his own resolve. Glancing at Rusty, who had vanished into the shadows to create a diversion, Gabriel steeled himself. The first shot shattered the eerie quiet, a warning fired by one of the assailants. Unperturbed, Gabriel took aim and fired back, the report of his rifle echoing among the trees. The bullet struck near one of the rider's horses, causing the animal to rear in alarm, and chaos erupted. Sensing the danger, Flame reared mightily, and as one attacker attempted to loop a lasso around the stallion, Flame broke free and charged with explosive energy. Gabriel's subsequent shot grazed the leader's shoulder, drawing a curse as blood stained his shirt. For a moment, the remaining riders hesitated, their confidence shaken by the combined ferocity of Flame and Gabriel's precision. "Take him down!" the leader bellowed in rage. Gabriel retreated toward the cabin, using its sturdy walls for cover. Another shot rang out, striking a man attempting to flank him, forcing the attacker to cry out as he collapsed. Meanwhile, Rusty emerged from the gloom, barking furiously and drawing the assailant's attention away from Gabriel. Flame, seizing the turning point, charged directly at the leader. With a series of thunderous hooves, the stallion collided with the foe. The leader raised a shotgun in a futile attempt to defend himself. But Flame reared, toppling the weapon and leaving the man cowering in fear. "Call them off!" Gabriel shouted, rifle fixed on the remaining attackers. "Or none of you will leave here alive." The leader's face twisted with anger as he weighed his options. Finally, with a bitter shout of defeat, he ordered his men to withdraw one by one into the forest depths. As silence reclaimed the clearing, Gabriel slowly lowered his rifle, his chest still heaving with exertion. Flame stood tall, its breathing heavy but its spirit unbroken, a living testament to defiance. Approaching the stallion with gentle reverence, Gabriel murmured, "You did it, boy. You showed them exactly what you're made of." Flame leaned into his touch, its eyes softening as if to acknowledge the bond they now shared. In that moment, they had not only survived, but emerged stronger together. The attackers had been driven off, and Gabriel sensed that the wild itself had rendered its judgment. With the first light of dawn creeping over the horizon, Gabriel and Flame stood side by side in the clearing, both scarred yet undefeated. The morning sun bathed the landscape in a soft, golden glow, highlighting the healing wounds on Flame's once tattered coat and casting long, serene shadows upon the earth. Gabriel leaned against the cabin's porch, his rifle resting at his side, as a gentle calm settled over him for the first time in weeks. The invaders had been vanquished, their arrogance shattered by the untamed spirit of a stallion and the resolute heart of a man who refused to yield. Gabriel was certain they would not return. The wild had its own way of punishing those who trespassed. Flame resumed, grazing quietly in the clearing, its ears flicking at the soft rustling of leaves in a gentle breeze. The stallion had endured untold hardships and emerged mightier than before, a beacon of resilience and the indomitable force of nature. Gabriel observed it with deep admiration. The horse had not only saved itself, but had also rescued him from a life of lonely isolation. The cabin, once merely a haven of solitude, now brimmed with renewed purpose and the promise of companionship. Gabriel strolled to the edge of the clearing, where Flame lifted its head to meet his steady gaze. "You're extraordinary," he said softly. "They tried to break you, but you never did." Flame exhaled a warm, misty breath in response. After a long, pensive pause, Gabriel continued, "I believe it's time for you to return to your true home." Over the next few hours, Gabriel carefully removed the makeshift halter from Flame's neck, his hand lingering on the stallion's flowing mane one final time. For a moment, the animal stood still, as if understanding the significance of what was to come. Gabriel then opened the creaking gate at the clearing's edge, stepping aside to reveal the winding path beyond. "You've earned your freedom," he said, voice steady despite the lump in his throat. "Now go, run free." For a long heartbeat, Flame hesitated, its deep, dark eyes reflecting an unspoken promise, a bond that neither time nor distance could sever. Then, with a powerful surge, the stallion bolted into the forest, its hooves thundering as it vanished among the trees. Gabriel watched with a bittersweet smile, feeling both the emptiness of loss and the joy of having witnessed a miracle of the wild. Weeks melted into months, and the forest gradually returned to its ancient rhythm. The wolves retreated to their distant haunts, and the men remained far away. Gabriel continued his quiet existence in the cabin, yet every so often, while wandering the winding trails or sitting on the weathered porch, a flash of chestnut motion would catch his eye. Flame, wild and unbridled, roamed free as nature intended. And although the stallion no longer roamed the clearing, its presence was felt as vividly as if it stood beside him. The wilderness, ever fickle, tested those who called it home, yet it also rewarded those who stood firm. For Gabriel and Flame, their shared journey was not merely about survival. It was an enduring testament to resilience, trust, and the unbreakable bond between a man and the untamed wild. As the sun dipped below the horizon once more, bathing the forest in a soft, golden radiance, Gabriel reclined in his creaking chair. His gaze swept across the tree line, a quiet assurance stirring in his heart. Somewhere out there, Flame was running free, a symbol of the wild strength, liberty, and the relentless spirit of life. And for Gabriel, that was enough. True freedom was not simply about survival. It was about reclaiming what was inherently yours. This, then, is the story of Flame, a stallion who defied all odds, proving that courage and determination can surmount even the harshest trials. If this tale of unwavering spirit moved you, please consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and sharing it with someone who cherishes stories of valor, connection, and hope. Together, we can spread a message of compassion and honor the enduring bond between humans and the creatures of the wild, ensuring that no life is ever forgotten.
Disclaimer: this channel does not support or tolerate any form of discrimination, racism, prejudice, or violation of human rights. The stories presented here are original and created by the author with the aim of promoting reflection, awareness, and dialogue. All content is developed with respect for diversity and the dignity of all people.